Meet the most dangerous soldiers America never wanted at the front lines. Shocking truth revealed. The night was darker than the deepest sea, shrouded in an eerie fog that swallowed the light. An unsettling chill clawed at the spine of anyone bold enough to stand near the base of Reed Mountain, where something wicked was rumored to brew. This was no ordinary place. It was a breeding ground for legends and, more disturbingly, for the very military nightmares folks whispered about while gathering around campfires. A hushed crowd, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity, watched the news flickering on the screen in the dimly lit bar. The images flashed of young soldiers, eyes wide like deer caught in the headlights, but it wasn't their youth that scared people. It was the panic pouring from their every pore. They were trained to be soldiers, taught to be warriors, yet here they were, caught in a relentless storm of chaos. They weren't supposed to exist, but yet they were right there in living color. The crowd felt an undercurrent of dread. What had happened to turn these brave men into trembling shells of humanity? Strange whispers danced on the air, rumors about covert operations, of soldiers sent on secret missions, some even saying they came back changed. Not by the war, but by something far worse. A harsh laugh broke through, hinting at viewers that the subject wasn't just about honor and duty anymore. Director S. Cuts revealed plans for a clandestine unit trained under the most bizarre, ethically questionable circumstances. They were promised glory, but it had come at a chilling price: their very souls. What kind of soldiers didn't just battle enemies but also their own demons? As the scene on screen shifted to a remote compound deep in the woods, murky visuals unveiled fluttering shadows that danced in a frenzy. What was lurking there? An unnatural fear crept into the hearts of those who dared to focus. Half-formed thoughts clouded reason. These men were not the heroes they imagined, but were they the monsters waiting to be unleashed? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But then, a sudden silence fell upon the bar, as if the world held its breath. One man turned pale, clenching his fists to stifle the shaking. They can't be real, can they? His words broke through the murmur. Shock and disbelief hung thick in the air, drawing everyone close back into the story that felt all too real. Were they really hiding in plain sight? Just then, the screen flickered back to life. A soldier's voice echoed in the room, gravelly and raw. "We are the shadows you don't want to see." And just like that, the night thickened, leaving questions lingering like smoke. What horrors lay ahead for these soldiers? And what would happen when the world found out? A flurry of whispers swept through the bar, igniting the tension that had settled like a fog. Eyes darted towards each other, glances heavy with unspoken thoughts. What if those shadows, those soldiers, were much closer than anyone realized? The air felt electric, charged with a palpable fear that sent chills down spines. On the screen, the soldiers' eyes flickered with memories that no one wanted to imagine. Myriad reports bounced around the room, growing louder with each retelling. "They say they hear voices," one man muttered, his eyes wide and darting. "Voices that twist their minds, making them see things that aren't there." The crowd shifted, pulling tighter together as if hoping for strength in numbers. Then, a sharp sound pierced the murmurs, a glass crashing to the floor. The bartender, a thunderous figure with tattoos crawling up his arms, cursed softly, his normally jovial demeanor slipping. "We don't want those nightmares here," he roared, eyes flicking to the screen as if expecting one of those shadowy figures to materialize before them. But as people continued talking, a woman at the back of the room stood, her expression a mask of determination. "Why are we afraid?" she shouted, her voice rising above the din. "These men fought for us. Yes, something happened, something dark, but maybe they need us to understand. Maybe they're waiting for someone to listen." The crowd hushed again, caught off guard. Could that conviction break the stigma? Tension cracked like lightning in the air. Her words lingered as the murmurous response was a hesitant agreement, minds watching the shadows flicker in their imaginations. What if they weren't just monsters? What if they were trapped, fighting battles within? Then the screen shifted again, showing an isolated figure standing on a ridge, silhouetted against a pale moon. "This is the debriefing of Unit X9, the voice vibrated through the room. "We are your protectors. But you must understand, the things we've done, we were pushed beyond any limit you can comprehend." The gravity of his words hung overhead, driving a stake of fear deeper into the hearts of the crowd. With each revelation, the air in the bar grew heavier. No one could look away from that soldier's haunted eyes. What had he seen? Faces turned pale, breaths became shallow. Was it madness? Delusion? There was a sense of impending doom, but also an unquenchable thirst for truth mingling with the dread. Suddenly, the woman who had spoken earlier stepped toward the screen, eyes burning with fierceness. "You can't just abandon them," she yelled, desperation seeping into her voice. "We can't let these fears dictate how we treat those who have sacrificed everything." Before she could finish her thought, a loud bang rattled the door to the bar, sending everyone jumping back. The glass rattled, and for a moment, the shadows inside seemed to reach out, the anticipation swallowing the space whole. "Do you hear that?" Someone yelped, dread cascading through the crowd like ice water. What had just entered from the night outside? The door burst open, revealing a figure draped in darkness, eyes glinting with secrets from another world. Gasps erupted, hearts pounding like war drums. "You shouldn't have dug too deep," the figure said gravely, the words chilling the blood of everyone watching. And in that moment, the question hung in the air: were they ready to face whatever truth lay beyond the door? Or would the shadows swallow them whole? The atmosphere thickened in the bar, the air humming with fear and uncertainty. For a moment, the figure in the doorway stood like a sentinel, shrouded in a coat of darkness that seemed to absorb the bar's dim light. The crowd was frozen, hearts racing, mouths agape. "Who are you?" the woman demanded, stepping bravely forward as her voice cut through the frozen silence. The tension was so high it felt like the flick of a match would ignite the entire room. Her courage, a stark contrast to the quivering patrons, shone like a beacon amidst the shadows. The figure took a step inside, revealing a face marked with time and suffering. "I'm here to warn you," he said, his voice gravelly, as if each word was dragged through the dirt of his past. "What you've seen on that screen is just the beginning." Murmurs erupted, faces awash with confusion and disbelief. The bartender, his bulk looming large, crossed his arms. "And why should we listen to you?" he challenged, defiance rising from the visceral pit of fear that gripped the crowd. "Because," the shadowed figure replied, lowering his hood to reveal eyes filled with a torment that seemed to bore into each observer's soul. "I've stood where they stand. I've faced the demons they fight." A collective gasp rippled through the room as he continued. "The voices they hear? Their warnings and curses." The woman stared at him, raw empathy piercing through the clot of fear. "What kind of curses?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading for clarity. He hesitated, his expression haunted. "They taunt them with the faces of those they've lost friends. Family." He shook his head, anguish gripping his features. "It messes with their minds, warping their own memories until they don't know what's real anymore. We were all part of something dark." The crowd leaned in, curiosity weaving its way through the fear, urging them to understand. "But we can help them, right?" the woman pressed, hope flickering stubbornly amid the shadows. The figure nodded, although his face reflected a gravitas that cut deeper than words. "You want to help? Then you need to know the truth. The soldiers were part of a project, something classified, something they can't officially talk about. But that's not the most dangerous part." Waves of murmurs broke through the crowd again like the crashing sound of ocean waves. "What's more dangerous?" someone whispered, their voice trembling. He glanced at the screen, where the haunted soldier's eyes flickered ominously in the neon glow. "They're not just battling specters of the past," he whispered, the urgency threading through his voice. Something was released, a force that goes beyond comprehension. They're being hunted, and if you don't join their fight, it could find you too. Silence hung thick, wrapping around every person in the room. The weight of his words sat heavily in their hearts. Would they stand by or take action? The bartender shook his head, trying to clear the fog of disbelief. You're telling us we're at risk now? Because of that? His bar was no longer just a neutral ground. It felt like a battlefield. Yes, the figure replied, voice rising. You need to realize this isn't simply about the soldiers anymore. It's about the truth behind the curtain, and what happens when shadows spill over into our world. With that, the bar door swung shut behind him. An unsettling stillness cloaked the room, thick with tension and uncertainty, where no one dared to move or breathe. And just as hope seemed to flicker into existence, a faint whisper echoed through the walls. There coming, a shiver raced down every spine. What lay ahead? How deep was the darkness that thrived on fear? Would they choose to embrace the reckoning? Or would the shadows consume what little trust they had left? The first few minutes stretched into an eternity, thick with dread. Don't move, don't breathe, don't show fear. This was how everyone felt, eyes darting around the bar, searching for something, anything that felt familiar. But the truth was, nothing felt safe anymore. Then, as if unleashed from an unseen tether, panic burst like a dam. People stumbled back from the bar, shouting, and the bartender's bark of authority turned into a cacophony. Get a grip, everyone, he yelled, but his voice barely cut through the chaos that engulfed the room. The woman's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing the fear swirling within her. We can't just sit here, she screamed, desperate to rally everyone. We have to figure out what he meant. We have to help them. Her voice trembled, yet held a brave resolve that momentarily quieted the chaos. A man in the back, visibly shaking, glanced dartedly at the door. Help them? What if we're the ones in danger? His gray eyes were wide with terror. Those soldiers are haunted, cursed. They'll drag us down with them. That sentiment resonated, and a wave of agreement rippled through the bar. Yes, right, another voice yelled. Why should we risk everything for people we don't even know? Restlessness seized the crowd, like a wild animal scratching at the door to get out as they mulled over their hasty retreat. The whispers returned, this time louder. Their coming echoed in taut, conspiratorial tones, swirlings of paranoia infecting the room like a plague. It wasn't just a prophecy, it felt like a threat that had teeth. The woman stepped onto the bar, a last resort to gain some control. Listen, do you believe that what he said could be true? That something is coming for us? She scanned their faces, looking for signs of resolve amid the fear. A fiery spark ignited in her chest, an adrenaline rush like she'd not felt in years. We have to fight back. A few exchanged suspicious glances, uncertainty still hanging like a thick fog. And how do you plan to do that? The bartender asked, his voice a mixture of skepticism and weariness. Her mind raced. How could she convince them? Were they really powerless against a force that could consume them all? We start by finding out more about the project. Why were those soldiers messed with? What kind of experiments were done? At that moment, a crash resounded outside. Glass shattered, and a heavy thud echoed through the night, sending shivers down every spine. Conversations stopped abruptly, replaced by collective dread. Did you hear that? Someone stammered, peering through the bar's grimy window panes. Outside, dark figures moved like shadows dancing on the edges of reality, encroaching the light offered by the bar's flickering neon sign. The woman's heart sank. We don't have much time. She spoke again, her voice low but steady. She jumped down from the bar, adrenaline boosting her urgency. We need to arm ourselves, figure out what we're dealing with. We can't wait until they breach our doors. With newfound determination, the crowd shifted. An uneasy alliance formed as some began to seek out anything that could resemble a weapon, a shattered bottle, a heavy barstool. They couldn't show weakness. They had to stand together, however frightened they felt. As the shadows grew closer, the whispers ignited again from myriad directions. They're here. The veil between their world and the darkness outside began to shred. Each heart trembled in unison as anticipation hung thick in the air. They braced for the confrontation that awaited. Questions raced unbidden, yet one stood out, looming larger than the rest. Were they truly prepared to face what was coming? The door rattled violently, a foreboding harbinger of what lay ahead. Would they confront the shadows? Or would they become just another set of victims swallowed by the dark? The bar door shuddered again, each tremor a heavy reminder of their impending doom. The cacophony of muffled voices outside grew. Gritting her teeth, the woman pushed through the crowd, trying to steady her racing heart. The door rattled louder this time, and the bartender positioned himself at the entrance, ready to defend his territory. "What's happening out there?" she gasped, urgency washing over her. The bartender shook his head, his brow furrowing with anxiety. "Can't see much. They're all out there, moving like a storm," he replied, his voice tight, barely above a whisper. She could feel the surge of fear in the air, pulsating through the bar like an electric current. With a steadying breath, the woman scanned the faces of those gathered, now clutching makeshift weapons while hearts pounded as one. "We can't hide here forever. The more we wait, the closer they get," she urged, attempting to pierce through the anxious atmosphere. A woman near her, clutching a shard of glass, interrupted. "But what if we're not ready? What if we run into them, whatever they are?" Her voice quavered, dripping with doubt. "Or you could just let fear decide for you," a man shouted, brandishing a barstool. "I'd rather die fighting than cower in this corner." His agitation stirred the others, their eyes flickering between fear and fragile courage. "Listen." The woman raised her voice again, capturing their attention. "There's no turning back. We need to gather our strength and face them. This isn't just about survival. It's about taking our lives back from whatever nightmare is roaming outside." Her words ignited a series of nods, small sparks of defiance lighting in their eyes. Together, someone murmured, and soon the mantra hummed through the crowd. Suddenly, the bartender jumped back as the door crashed open, splintering wood echoing through the room. A figure staggered inside, drenched in shadows. A soldier, hollow-eyed, skin sallow and contorted, looking like a specter from another world. The bar silenced instantly, all eyes fixed on the ghastly apparition. What happened to you?" The woman stammered, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes, her heart racing up her throat. "He must have been one of them, the soldiers they had discussed." The soldier raised a quivering hand, bloodied and torn. "Help them," he rasped, each word cracking under the weight of his pain. "They're coming. They're not what you think." A chill permeated the bar, wrapping around them like a vice. The figure's eyes darted toward the door, panic flaring. "You don't understand. You're in danger. They don't stop." The moment stretched, and the whispers morphed into frenzied screams of terror. The bartender stepped forward, taking hold of a wobbly bottle. "What did they do to you?" he demanded, menace creeping into his tone. But the soldier only shook his head. "You must." Before he could finish, distant screams broke the quiet yet again, sharper this time, echoing like an alarm ringing through the night. Heavy footsteps thudded against the ground, a terrifying herald of chaos. The shadows outside morphed into solid forms, charging the specters they feared, flesh and fury combined. "Get ready," the woman shouted, her heart hammering in her chest. "We fight like hell." As the soldiers pushed forward, adrenaline erupted, mingling with primal fear. The last echoes of humanity wrestled with the reality of what lay behind their crumbling walls. The soldier stumbled backward, eyes wide in horror. "You don't know what they want," he shouted, desperation flooding his voice. She felt it wash over her. The truth was lurking in every shadow. What lay outside wasn't just a threat. It was her deepest nightmare realized. And then the dark figures breached the threshold, and everything that once felt real twisted into a chaos no one could escape from. Was it too late to turn back, or were they already too far gone? The bar erupted with chaos as the dark figures surged through the doorway. The grotesque soldiers burst in, the fluorescent bar lights dancing against their tattered uniforms, highlighting the horror in their eyes. Fear cascaded through the crowd, crashing into each person like an angry wave, leaving panic in its wake. "Don't let them in," someone screamed, but voices blended into a wild symphony of fear. The woman felt her heartbeat echoing in her ears, drowning out reason. Adrenaline shot through her veins as she gripped the broken glass tighter, knuckles white. She had to act. "Now," she cried, her voice piercing through the thrumming panic. "Fight back. We can't let them take us." Several patrons rallied around her, the whiskey-fueled courage spilling forth. A man swung the barstool, crashing it against the lead soldier. Splintered wood burst into the air. For a heartbeat, a fierce sense of hope surged through her as the soldier stumbled. But that hope shattered as the soldiers pressed in, revealing their true forms, eyes vacant but filled with a relentless urge. With a guttural growl, one lunged forward, grasping at a woman who hadn't moved quickly enough. She screamed, a high, cutting sound echoing in the small space. Then they screamed too, a sound that resonated with a chilling familiarity. Her heart raced. Were these soldiers even human anymore? The woman took a step back, her throat tight with disbelief. "I'm not ready to die," she shouted, racing to shield the woman. But two soldiers barreled past her, tearing through the crowd like a tempest. The bar was no longer a sanctuary. It twisted into a nightmarish tableau of chaos. "Help!" someone pleaded, but it was drowned out as more soldiers entered, becoming a tide of terror crashing against their fragile resistance. The soldiers moved in a macabre dance, instinct driving them to capture their prey, eyes darting for easier victims, those too shocked to see the danger barreling right towards them. In that moment, she froze, her resolve splintering like the barstool in the air. And then she caught sight of the soldier, the one who had stumbled inside first. His face, a ghostly mask of regret, suddenly twisted into utter terror. "Help them, you don't understand," he shouted again, his voice cracking as he pointed urgently toward the door. "What are you talking about?" another man screamed, swinging a broken bottle, shards of glass coating the floor in an ominous glimmer. A deadly silence fell for a moment as one of the soldiers cocked its head, almost inquisitive, before advancing with a speed that stole her breath. It lunged for the bartender, but he dodged, swinging wildly. Desperation hung thick in the air, palpable and suffocating. With renewed determination, she dove toward the nearest soldier. Hands trembling, she slashed out, catching the soldier's arm. It recoiled, a guttural howl emitting from deep within its chest, clawing at its own skin as if the pain grounded it back in its shattered humanity. "Don't stop. Keep fighting," she yelled, rallying the others, but doubt flickered in their eyes. The soldier's body trembled, then it fell limp, revealing nothing but agony and loss as the creature's strength waned. Yet, another wave poured into the bar, flesh amalgamated with darkness, a relentless flood. The fear roiling in the air now mixed with the acrid scent of sweat and desperation. A deep, bone-rattling growl resonated from the masses, and in that moment, the woman realized the magnitude of their plight. "Together we can push them back," she shouted, squeezing her eyes shut for a brief moment of prayer. The soldiers kept coming, unyielding and unrecognizable. What did the soldier mean by "help them"? And were they truly the monsters that lingered in her nightmares? Breathing heavily, she prepared herself for what might be the hardest fight of her life, fighting for the truth that lay tangled in the thrumming chaos surrounding her. Hoping there was still time to uncover inéditas, they charged into the fray. Her fingers dug into the broken glass, bracing for the storm to come. Would they find the answer hidden within body and blood? Or would they remain forever trapped in this hell they had stumbled into? She plunged into the chaos, adrenaline coursing through her like wildfire. Each swing of her arm felt electric, the broken glass biting into her palm as she slashed and struck, desperation fueling her fight. "Keep pushing," she roared, her voice cutting through the roar of screams and growls. But her heart thudded with uncertainty. They were losing ground. The soldiers were relentless. A massive figure loomed before her, its form grotesque, a shadow forged from nightmares. She could see the thick, foul breath billowing from its twisted mouth as it lunged at her. In an instant, a sudden crash echoed, and the bar top splintered under another assault. The bartender was fighting, too, sending bottles flying, creating an impromptu barricade of broken glass and spilled liquor. But for every creature he managed to fend off, two more poured in, their hollow eyes searching for flesh. A sharp pain lanced through her arm as one of the soldiers snagged her, claws grazing her skin, ripping through her sleeve. She recoiled but regained her footing, adrenaline morphing pain into a distant thrum. "Split up," she shouted, eyeing a back exit she hadn't noticed before. "Find a way out." Panic surged, but there was no time to think. The soldiers were flooding in, their guttural cries bleeding into an unsettling chorus, each sound a reminder of their loss of humanity. "Over here," a voice yelled. It was one of the men from the bar, pushing past two soldiers as he sprinted toward the narrow back door. Without hesitation, she followed, dragging her battered body forward. They shoved through the broken glass door, tumbling into the alleyway behind the bar, gasping for air. But their reprieve was short-lived. The sounds of chaos followed, echoing down the alley as the shadows spilled out after them. She turned to see a band of ragged survivors spilling into the dim light. Terrified eyes met hers. "Where are the others?" one woman asked, breathless. "I don't know," she stammered. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the unfolding horror, how the soldiers seemed tethered to something, some shared pain that drove them toward the living, toward their pain. A sudden thud drew everyone's attention. A soldier had stumbled out behind them, crashing into the alley wall, its twisted form gasping for breath. Its skin shimmered, almost human, but marred with darkness. "Why?" the creature rasped, clenching its throat. "Why are we trapped?" Tension hung thick in the air, an unspoken truth breathing life into the chaotic din. The soldiers weren't just mindless horrors. There was a flicker of something, remnants of who they used to be. The bartender, now catching his breath, staggered to her side. "We have to figure this out. They're not all monsters, not yet. Maybe but how do we help them?" She interrupted, the weight of the question settling on her like a shroud. What could they do against such tangible despair? Another scream rolled through the alley, this time muffled and distant. She felt her heart tighten. The crowd behind them was still thick with fear, fighting to push the soldiers back while they fled. "Behind us!" one man shouted. The soldiers were regrouping, their eyes lighting up with renewed ferocity. She turned, facing the oncoming wave, a mix of dread and determination surging through her. "Stand strong," she cried out, rallying each survivor around her. "We're not done yet." In that terrifying moment, a thought crystallized in her mind. The soldiers weren't merely here to kill. They were also victims caught in a sinister game. If they could find a way to break the cycle, to uncover the truth behind the soldiers' pain, perhaps they could change everything. But just as that hope ignited within her, a chilling howl rose from the entrance, a sound that chilled her blood as darkness poured forth, the tide of monsters relentless in pursuit. This time, they weren't just fighting for survival, but for answers hidden in the blackness, answers that could turn the tide. But the soldiers were closing in fast, and time was running out. As the shadows crept closer, she clenched her fists, steeling herself for one monumental choice. Would they stand and fight against an army of horrors, or would they risk everything to confront a truth that could destroy them all? The stakes had never been so high. The alley pulsed with a frantic energy, each survivor instinctively moving closer together, hearts pounding like war drums. She could see the fear in their eyes reflected in the dim light, a collective dread that threatened to engulf them all. As the soldiers regrouped, dark shapes silhouetted against the alley's faint glow, she felt the crushing weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. "Form a line," she shouted, the sound tearing through the air like a siren. "We can't let them reach the civilians." Each word echoed like thunder in her ears, dragging her resolve lower, making it seem more like a desperate prayer than a rallying cry. The knife of fear twisted deeper inside her as one man staggered back, his breath ragged as he faced the incoming figures. But the raw terror on his face transformed her panic into fierce determination. The bartender joined her side, clutching a shattered bottle, its jagged edge glinting ominously. "Are we doing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she replied through gritted teeth. In that moment, her fear crystallized into unwavering resolve. They were more than the ghosts of humanity. The soldiers were trapped in a cycle of pain, and she couldn't let their struggle be in vain. On my mark, she felt the adrenaline sharpen her focus, pushing her past the point of exhaustion. Now, together, they surged forward, a wave of defiance against the encroaching dark. The soldiers charged at them with animalistic howls, clawing through the air, eyes glowing with a ferocity that threatened to consume everything. She ducked and swung, the bottle smashing against the skeletal arm of a soldier. The glass shattered, spraying across the cobblestones like stars. "Move!" she screamed again, urging the survivors to push forward, to resist the suffocating grip of despair. But as she fought, a sickening thought nagged her mind. What if they were merely pawns in a game far larger than any monster? "Get cover!" someone shouted, and she whipped around to see a group of children hiding behind a dumpster, their faces pale and shadows of innocence fading fast. A surge of protectiveness flooded her. "Stay down," she yelled, but the sound of heavy footsteps grew louder. Closer suddenly, one of the children screamed, a piercing sound that pierced through the turmoil, fracturing the chaotic symphony. A soldier had broken free from the fray, clawed hand reaching toward them, driven by instinct more than reason. "No!" she cried, a primal rage boiling inside. With a roar, she launched herself, tackling the soldier away from the kids. The impact knocked her breath out, but adrenaline surged in response, flooding her senses as she fought against the weight bearing down on her chest. She rolled to her feet, ready to deliver a final strike. She caught a glimpse of its eyes, a fading ember caught in a storm. There was confusion there, a flicker of humanity that made her pause. "Why are we trapped?" The soldier's voice broke through the chaos, a haunting echo that made her heart skip. It wasn't just a growl seeking vengeance, it was a question laced with desperation. Her breath hitched. This was it, this was the threads of truth she needed to unravel. "Help!" The plea escaped her lips unbidden, a spontaneous prayer. "Help us understand. You don't have to be alone in this." The soldiers paused, as if caught between worlds. For a heartbeat, silence blanketed the chaos. Was there still hope within them? But then, with a thunderous roar, their eyes blazed with fury once more, and the moment shattered. The survivors braced themselves, ready to face the wave of despair. "Fall back," the bartender shouted, but there was nowhere left to run. In the next instant, the darkness closed in, feral and hungry. She could feel her heart racing, but then a new sound distracted her, a low rumble, deep and resonant, pulling her thoughts together. A massive shadow surged behind the soldiers, a shape more profound and ominous than any creature they had faced. It moved with purpose, and in its wake, the soldiers froze, shivers running through their twisted forms. What now? The question trembled on her lips, the haunting uncertainty ushering her deeper into fear. But she was already too far gone. The path ahead felt like a cascading tailspin into the unknown. What was this new terror, and how would they survive the final act of the nightmare yet to come? The answer lay just beyond the shadows, waiting to reveal itself. What kind of reckoning would the survivors face in the heart of darkness? The shadow loomed larger, an overwhelming presence that sent a chill through the air. It moved, fluid and predatory, pushing the soldiers aside like leaves in the wind. Her heart raced, and panic clawed at her throat. She felt the weight of every survivor's eyes on her, their despair mirrored in her own. What could she possibly do? "Stand your ground," she shouted, though her voice trembled. The words tasted bitter. She clutched the broken bottle tightly, its sharp edges biting into her palm, reminding her of the reality they were trapped in. The massive shape revealed itself, a creature born from nightmares. Its skin glistened like obsidian in the dim light, muscles rippling beneath. There was something human about it, a grotesque mockery of life. Eyes deep-set and hollow glowed like dying stars, filled with a torment that sent icy fingers of dread down her spine. "Wait," A voice rang out from the crowd. It was the bartender. "We're not your enemies." The creature halted, tilting its head, a move that sent a shiver through her. It seemed to consider the words, uncertainty flashing across its features. "Do you remember?" It spoke, the words rough, like rusty metal scraping against flesh. "Do you remember the fear?" The question hung in the air, heavy and pulsating. She felt the deep resonance of its inquiry vibrate through her body. What was it trying to say? Could this monstrous being be as lost as the soldiers? "Help us," she urged again, her voice fueled by a mix of defiance and desperation. "Help us break the chains that bind you." With that, the soldiers surged forward again, this time towards the creature. She felt the air shift, the collective pulse of desperation radiating around her. Hands clutched at weapons and makeshift shields, minds racing with confusion. But the creature didn't move away. It stood still, its breath heavy and laden with unspoken pain. What had happened here? "How many of you fought for freedom?" One soldier barked, his voice thick with anger. "You're just like us. Only twisted. Look what they did to you." "No," she shouted, emotion tearing at her insides. "Don't you see? We can change this. We can fight together." The words blended with the chaos, a sound that felt fragile in the face of overwhelming fear. The tension rose, electric and ready to snap. All the eyes, all the hearts, were locked in a collective moment of uncertainty. Would the monster advance or would it recoil? And then the ground shook. A rumble much deeper than any breath shook the alley, and a piercing scream echoed through the night. A ripple of panic surged through the survivors without warning. The creature lunged, its massive form barreling forward with a speed that defied its size. She barely had time to shout for everyone to scatter before the air was filled with chaos, dust and bodies crashing together in a mess of limbs. Fire erupted nearby, flames painted the scene with flickering shadows. The bartender fell, his screams swallowed by the encroaching night. "Get back," she yelled, shoving her way through the fray, adrenaline pounding in her ears as she fought to reach him. The soldier, the horrifying creature, took hold of a screaming teenage girl. Her heart dropped into her stomach. No, no, no. They couldn't lose another. With every ounce of energy, she sprinted, feet pounding against the concrete as terror gripped her veins. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was a race against time, a plea for salvation against all odds. She could see the girl's wide eyes, pleading for help, and it fueled her resolve. But just as she reached out, the creature glanced back at her, and for a fleeting moment, she glimpsed something in those dark eyes, something she couldn't quite understand. "Please," she begged, tears stinging her eyes, "don't hurt her." And then everything stopped. The alley froze, a heartbeat in time, as the girl's scream faded into the silence. What was this moment? And what lay ahead as they faced the monstrous truth? Would they break free from the nightmare entwined in the heart of darkness? Or would they fall victim to the very monsters they battled? The answer was waiting in the shadows, teetering on the brink of revelation. The chaos of the night reached a deafening crescendo. Amidst the swirling shadows, a stillness descended, eerie and uncanny. The creature, clutching the terrified girl, hesitated, its breath roughened and ragged. Time thickened, each heartbeat echoing in the oppressive silence like a distant war drum. "What are you?" the woman choked out, stepping forward, her frame trembling as raw fear morphed into courage. The shadows hung heavy, yet something flickered behind its hollow eyes, something almost human. I carried them here," it rasped, voice gravelly and strained, words spilling like jagged glass, cutting into the silence. "The fear, it binds us all. My brothers, they must be freed. But we were made to forget." Understanding sparked deep within her. "You were soldiers like them," she exclaimed, her voice gaining strength as the realization washed over her. "You're all victims of this darkness." The creature looked at her, blinking slowly as if struggling to comprehend. "We were betrayed," it growled, the shadows rekindling in its gaze. "They twisted our minds, turned us into these monsters. They feed off our pain, our madness." A chill threaded through the crowd. Memories of the haunted soldiers played in their minds, a mirror reflecting despair. "But we can help," she urged, resolve coursing through her veins like fire. "We can fight together. We don't have to be afraid." The soldieress grip on the girl eased, confusion twisting its features. "You would risk your lives for us?" "Yes," she shouted, desperation climbing. "Because we believe there's still a chance for all of us. This isn't just about our survival. It's about truth. We can end this suffering." Around her, the survivors stirred, murmurs of agreement rising from the crowd like smoke through the trees. "We believe in you," shouted the bartender, his voice rising above the unease. "We believe in them. We can break the cycle." The creature tilted its head, and for a heartbeat, a flicker of something luminous passed through its gaze. Behind it, the tortured soldiers stood, hesitating, their energies wavering. Could they turn back? Could they find their humanity again? She pushed deeper into the current of fear. "You don't have to fight. Join us. Together we can seek the truth. If we can defeat the darkness inside you, we can defeat the darkness in our world." A collective breath held tight, hope building in stagnant air. The soldiers edged forward, uncertainty etched on their twisted faces. The fear that had consumed them began to wane, sparked by the emergence of a singular truth. Shared anguish can find a way to heal through unison. "Believe," she yelled, her heart racing as her words resonated. "Believe in the fight for each other. We're stronger when we stand united against the darkness." And there it was, a moment pregnant with possibility. The soldier's eyes shimmered, a flicker of recognition, a silent testament to what could be. With an anguished roar, it stepped back and released the girl, who tumbled sideways, gasping for breath but safe. "Release us," it begged, tears shimmering in the edges of its empty gaze. "You must help us break free from this curse." The survivors rallied, solidarity igniting the air, pushing back the tide of horror. Together, they rallied, weapons raised, fists clenched, channeling the strength of adrenaline and need. As the plea for release rippled through the soldiers, "Help us," the air crackled with energy. They stood shoulder to shoulder, the collective energy morphing. A fierce light radiated, illuminating the darkness that threatened to close in. Together, the boundary between past and present dissolved as they faced their fears, an army reborn from the depths of despair. The creatures began to shake, the shadows against their skin flickering like an old film reel unraveling. It was stunning, unbearably beautiful, a redemption writ large. The shadows fell away, unraveling like smoke until nothing but human forms remained, worn but whole, surrounded in a tapestry of backgrounds stitched by shared pain. They had walked through the fire and emerged on the other side. The woman gasped, tears streaming as recognition balanced hope and relief in her heart. "You did it," she exclaimed, seeing those who had once battled their demons now encased in an aura of light. The massive creature, now human again, stepped forward. "We are free." "Thank you," it said, voice softened, lined with new understanding. It extended a hand, a bond forged in unity. The world shifted ever so slightly, opening to a flickering dawn breaking through the remnants of darkness. The survivors surged forward, embracing, giving voice to their pain and strength. Together, they might weave a new story, one that would heal the wounds and rebuild what had been lost. "We are still soldiers," the woman said, voice steady as the light enveloped them all. "But now we are fighting for each other." And with that, the night of horrors dimmed, shadows retreated, leaving only echoes, reminders of resilience and redemption. They had faced despair and clawed their way back, scarred but stronger. Fear had been their adversary, but unity their greatest weapon. As the dawn broke, they looked toward the horizon, their hearts lighter, and the world awaited their next move. It was time to write their story. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now, it really helps out the algorithm. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think happens next? And make sure to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the channel.